Welcome to the Punk CX podcast. My name is Adrian Swinscote. I'm an advisor, author, and general explorer of the service and experience space. My guests tend to have just released some interesting research. They run a company that has some interesting tech in the service and experience space. They are part of an organization that is doing some cool stuff, or they run their own business doing interesting things for both their customers and or their employees. That's enough from me. Let's get into the interview. So welcome to the next edition of the Punk CX podcast. With me today, I have Kenji Hayward, who is the Senior Director of Customer Support at Front. Hey, Kenji, how are you doing?
Good, Adrian. Thanks for having me.
You're very, very welcome. Now, Kenji, for the folks that haven't heard of you or haven't heard of Front, and I don't know where they've been if they haven't heard from you, but in that case, can I ask you to give me a bit of a thumbnail sketch on you, the work that you do, and what Front is all about?
Yeah, I've been leading global support at Front for, believe it or not, 7 years now. I'm a support purist. I've only worked support jobs. So I've worked retail jobs. And then my first job out of college was just doing tier 1 support. And I have not done anything else since. I mean, I've grown in my role, but I am just 100% pure support experience. And Front, if you have not heard of it, is the all-in-one AI-powered customer service platform built for collaboration. So today we've got over 9,000 customers using it. And the cool thing is, because it's a support product, we use it on our support team. So it's very meta. We support our customers using a support tool that we built. So it's a really unique position to be in.
Fantastic. You eat your own dog food, as they say, I think, in the trade.
I think people now say drink your own champagne. Maybe they didn't like the dog food analogy.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, drink their own champagne. It tells different messages or sends different messages. But the thing I wanted to start with was that, and this speaks to almost like Front's approach, because like for over 20 years now, I think it was 20 years, I did a bit of a Google Trends piece of research on this, and it said about the idea that email is dead, and that first popped up there was a spike on Google Trends around 2004. It says that people went, email is dead. But on a first principle basis, I actually believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, that Front takes a very much an email first approach. And I just wanted to ask you about that. I mean, why is that? I mean, so email for you guys is obviously not dead, but why are you taking that approach? Because sounds very, very different to many of the other platforms that are out there.
Yeah, people have been saying email is dying, or it's going to die, or it's dead already for over 20 years. Front's been around for 10 years. And I think we were one of the first companies that evolved email. So it's very much the same way that we communicate today, but we added collaboration to the mix, which unlocked a lot of stuff. So when we first started, we were primarily an email company that had shared email and shared inboxes, and you can collaborate with your coworkers to send a message to a customer. But I think the reason that email is never going to die is it's still the preferred way businesses communicate. Any professional message you want to send, you're not going to text your CV to the job that you're applying to. So I think there's still very real use cases for email for the next 20 years plus.
And so tell me about the kind of the collaboration side of kind of things, because it's like, I think the thing that people were talking about with email, like the drawback of it is that you end up with this, you send it to somebody and then you kind of copy people and it's all this, and things get lost in the chain and all these different sort of things. And then somebody replies all out of sync of the chain, and then it all gets a bit messy and stuff. And so tell me about how you've almost like separated that signal out from the noise, as it were.
Yeah, I think that was the main problem customers were facing when we first started Front, was this kind of broken, fragmented emails everywhere and not everyone on the same page. So when you can collaborate on the same email or same communication, we just call it a conversation. That's really powerful because it does cut down all the back and forth. And for the customer, it's more seamless. So instead of me going, okay, I'm going to escalate this to Adrian. Oh, no, it's not me. I'm going to give it to, so-and-so.
Right.
You can just literally mention someone in the background and the customer has no idea that that's happening. And so it's magic for them. It's like, oh, here's the person that I wanted to get a hold of. And I didn't have to ask that, even though behind the scenes, there was collaboration happening.
Right. And so I guess it feels to me it's a bit like it's along very much aligned to some of the functionality you see in many ticketing solutions, but it's in a format that is very familiar to us, and we actually don't see some of that. So it's basically like leveraging the power of email and I guess the habits and the behaviors that we've kind of built up around kind of emails is all very familiar to us, but building out these, taking a lot of the clutter outside of the actual back and forth, the actual conversation that is.
Yeah, because if you think about it, customers, when they're logging a ticket, they're just sending an email. Like they're not using whatever platform your team's using usually to send a ticket. So it's kind of meeting the customers where they are. What are they comfortable? Do they like to text? Do they like to email and make it more conversational? We do ticketing at front, but for the customer, it's an email. Like we can still track that because it's, a message. Like a ticket is just an email with a dedicated number associated to it.
Yeah, absolutely. But that's not really what I wanted. Well, that's only one of the things I wanted to talk to you about that whole sort of email side of things, that email first approach, and how that's very much aligned to just our behaviors, as it were, and completely, counter to all this kind of hyperbole that goes around email is dead. But there was some other things that when we were talking in the setup of the podcast, that I wanted to talk to you about, and one which is something which is very close to my heart, because you personally have been advocating for the approach that everybody should hop in the support queue. Now, I've been saying for the longest time, and it's kind of a radical idea, that we have the technology that could have everybody doing a stint in support, regardless of who they are. We have the only barrier is that I guess is mindset and time and effort, and probably some licensing issues, but you could probably figure that out. And I think that if you do that it collapses the distance between what's happening in that service environment and the problems that customers have with people across the business. But as I say, you've been personally advocating that approach for some time now. I mean, I wanted to get your perspective. Why is that? Why, have you been advocating that approach?
Yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do. The first support book I ever read was Delivering Happiness by Tony Hsieh of Zappos.
Mm-hmm.
And, it was just like a novel idea at that time. And as I started to get more experience at front, it was just something I wanted to really do for once. I just wanted to actually try this and see if I could pull it off. It worked really well in the early days. So when we had pre-pandemic, everyone's in the office and we were a pretty small company, it was easy to do. During the pandemic, that lost priority and just kind of fell off.
Mm-hmm.
And so fast forward to today, where we've brought it back in full force over the last year, 6 months, we just learned what works and what doesn't work. Like things like Zoom are now a thing. So scheduling, those calls in advance. And I think you touched on a good point, making it accessible, like getting that friction out of it so that it's just so easy. All you have to do is show up. We will take care of the rest. We'll help you collaborate. And it's about making it valuable for everybody. Because I think the first mistake I made was, this is a great way to help the support team. Like this will help us clear our queue. But you can't look at it that way. You have to think about, how is the person who's taking time out of their extremely busy day to shadow us, to work with us, what are they going to gain from this session?
Mm-hmm.
So it's a chance to get to know us, as the support team, but also a chance to work with customers directly. And in our case, to see their products. So maybe something that they built is really powerful.
And so let me be clear, this is something that you have implemented at front.
Yes.
And so, you say it was easier pre-pandemic and then it sort of shifted in terms of priorities, and I can understand that. And now it's coming back with it, and you've been doing that over this, the last sort of 6 months to a year. I mean, so tell me a little bit about how you actually do that. How do you get people involved? Because that's the sort of the nitty gritty of it all, right?
Yeah, that is the nitty gritty. So, the first step is you got to talk to your people team. So whatever company you work at, making sure you partner with your leadership team, but also your HR team, make sure that this can actually be a part of company onboarding.
Okay.
Because for the longest time, it was a side project. It was something we would do. People would volunteer. But once it's an actual, you have to do this in your first 30 days as a new hire, then it really starts to take off.
Right.
And I think this is probably not applicable for everybody, but if you can get your founders or founder or CEO to participate really early, that sends a great message to the team of, I walk the walk. You guys should also do this program. And that's what we did. So we've got a new CEO in the last few months, Dan O'Connell.
Mhm.
And within his first 2 weeks, he had signed up for the session. And that's when we got basically sold out tickets to all of our events and I'm not even kidding, for the next 6 months, I've got people who join and they're like, can I get on an earlier session? And I go, no, you have to just wait till the next block opens up. So it's the hottest ticket in town, apparently.
Nice. But I guess it's like, that's a nice kind of situation to have. But I guess it's like in other kind of places there, or maybe other parts of the company, I'm guessing there might be some people that are probably not completely sold on the idea. I mean, did you face any resistance? And if so, how did you rather than just mandating it, how did you smooth out those wrinkles?
Yes. So I made it 100% optional at first.
Okay.
So there were some people who it made sense, product managers were a support tool. They want to learn more about support, so they will join the sessions. But something we did really early was doing an exit survey. So getting those quotes from the folks who joined the sessions, and then at a company meeting, sharing those results. So actually publicly saying, hey, we've got this program. It's optional today. Here's what some of the folks who took it are saying. And then once I did that, that's when I was getting approached by other heads of departments of, oh, we've got to do this for our team. Like, we need to get our product knowledge up. This sounds like a great idea. And then it just kind of took off from there. The funny thing is I actually get more resistance from the support community because this is like not something that is typically done. Like, it's like you and I think it's a great idea, but actually I think a majority of support leaders don't do this for whatever reasons. Like, one pushback I got when I posted about this was that, this is not a good idea because you're going to show how easy our jobs are. And that's absolutely not the case. If that's the case for you, that's a problem. But for my team, it's a chance to showcase how great they are and also to work with our customers because some folks are so busy. Maybe they're a recruiter. They'll never talk to a customer who's actually using your product. This is like their one time to do it. So it's just funny that I got more pushback from other support folks than my actual team.
And how is it actually worked out? I mean, what sort of demonstrable impacts have you seen across the business since you've actually kind of like done this and it's become more of a regular sort of like thing?
Yeah, I mean, the number one thing is it's officially part of onboarding. So it's no longer just the side project. It's a thing that I get to say that every new hire at Front will have gone through this program. So if we talk a year or two from now, who knows how many folks that will be. So I think that was the biggest milestone for us it was our OKR to actually make it a program that the company accepted. So I think that's the biggest thing is just getting it out of the woodworks of a project and actually making it a company-wide initiative. Some of the other benefits that we've gotten are it's something we talk about all the time. Like you and I are talking about it. Our sales team talks about it, our marketing team. So it's a great way as a collaboration platform to showcase, hey, we can make it easy for you to collaborate with your teammates. Here are some of the benefits. But there's only, for you, I'm actually curious, what are some of the benefits you see? Because you've probably been pushing for this longer than I have.
The thing I find fascinating is that, people talk about being data-driven decision makers, right? Data-driven decision-making organizations. But there's different levels of data, and there's data you'll see on a spreadsheet, data you see on a dashboard, all those different sort of things. But actually getting closer to where the action is, where customers are actually describing actual problems that they have. And whether you're in product or you're in marketing or you're in recruitment or you're in finance or whatever, you're just kind of starting to build that sort of those neural connections between people and kind of like who they're ultimately serving. And it just collapses those kind of the barriers. And I think this is just a fascinating, thing because people talk about organizations and their like siloed behavior and everything else. I think it just feels like a really organic way of smashing down those walls so people understand kind of like what's kind of going on. And it's real-time data too. Like somebody can go in an onboarding session and or in a session and they're part of an onboarding, and then they come into, let's say they're a marketeer, and then they come into the next thing and they were like, I was in that onboarding session. And here's what I heard a customer say. And the marketing team go, really? Wow, we need to investigate that. And it's like real-time sort of like data. And I think that for me is fascinating because you're just able to sort of tell those stories and connect people to those stories much, much faster than You would be, when it comes to, oh, do a report, do a presentation, present at the all hands, all this other. It's like, meh. When people experience stuff in real time, I think that that has greater impact. I mean, I have ways that I think about the sort of data, and I say, well, first of all, I think data informs us, so we should always be gathering data and analyzing it because it informs us, right? But then I think the next level down is like stories move us. So we can take the data and we can tell stories, or we can take verbatims from people and we can tell those stories, and that kind of move us to action. But the next level down is that experiences compel us. When we see something ourselves or we experience something ourselves, it's like that gets us, it moves us to action, right? That we engage with it emotionally because you hear it in real time. And then you're like going, ah. And then I think you just inject so much more insight and energy into it. And I think that's, for me, that's why I advocate kind of like for it. And so I congratulate you on doing that, because I think it's a brilliant thing. I think more people should do it. And it shouldn't just be about the onboarding process. I mean, I'm a bit more radical. I think everybody should be on it periodically, all the time, on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Something we're doing for the first time, so we'll see if this goes well or not, is one of the worst case scenarios for any support team or maybe any customer team is going to an offsite because you're watching all your teammates have fun. But customers don't care. They don't care that you're at an offsite on a beach or whatever. Right. So support teams, and engineers too. I mean, we still have to work, so we can't shut down. Mm-hmm. And the cool thing about this one coming up is we're doing a company-wide initiative where everybody gets a ticket. So it doesn't matter who. You're going to get one, and it's going to create this real-time collaboration in person. So it's like another benefit of being an event. Oh, I don't know how to do this. Let me find the product person. Or, oh, this is a marketing question. So it actually forces you to collaborate with people you maybe have never talked to or met. Right. And yes, the benefit is support gets to have fun and enjoy the events like everybody else. So I'm looking forward to that. That's
great. I mean, hopefully you can take that and then you can start to scale it and make it a bit more of a regular sort of thing. But as you say, it's doing it as a flashbang sort of thing, everybody's on it all the time, is probably a little bit too much of a big step for people. Yeah. And you've got to kind of build it up kind of gradually. So I really like that way of trying to figure out, but also from an offsite perspective, it's like, it feels like a very personal sort of thing. It's like, we're still having to work, right? We still have to do all this sort of stuff. We just need your help. And if people are being able to help a little bit to make sure that you guys are all involved, and then you can benefit from the offsite as well, then it feels like it's a team effort thing. And so that's cool. That's cool. I like that. I bet it's the next step on the journey.
I think so. I mean, it's all about collaborating, and I love it. I love every part of it.
So that, in some spaces, like you've said, has been controversial for some people. But there was another thing that you said that you told me about, which was, I don't know, just as controversial, if not more controversial. Controversial, let's just leave it at that. Because you also made your support metrics public. And I was a bit like, okay, that's cool. Like, and it's a bit like when if you've got like a broadband provider or something, and they put their service status kind of up and things. It's a bit like that. So you're basically putting all your support metrics and making them public. And I was a bit like, okay, that's going to ruffle some people's feathers. So tell me about that, and tell me about how that came about.
Yeah, this is definitely the spicier take that I found. So this came about. It was something I had heard about probably in 2022. And the first company that I'd heard of doing this was Rippling. And their CEO had posted these series of tweets and did this whole call to arms, and nobody took it seriously. So basically it fell flat. Nobody did anything, and I just kind of put it on the side. But it always stuck with me of, man, that's such a cool idea. But I think I was waiting for someone to tell me it was okay. So I just kind of sat on it. It was like in my folder of stuff that I'll think of later. And then 6 months later, our CEO at the time, Mathilde, was like, hey, what do you think about that tweet? You want to talk about it? And so we just started talking about it more. And then obviously I'm using Front, so we're bringing people into these conversations, like bring the marketing person in, bring this person in. And so we all align that, it was a good idea, but ultimately it's up to me because it's our team's metrics.
Right.
So it's a very scary thing. Like, I'm not going to lie, it was probably the scariest thing I've done, up to this date in my career. Could have been
What were
an
you
epic.
afraid of though?
I don't know. I think it's like the fear of unknown of, okay, I'm going to make these. It's very vulnerable. These are my metrics. I don't know if they're, I think they're good, but maybe
Right.
they're not. Maybe
Okay.
customers are not going to like this, or maybe they'll think, hey, you're saying you're responding in this much time, but I didn't get a response in X time. So my
Right.
head was running with so many scenarios of the worst case, and then all to figure out that, nobody said anything. You flip it on and you're actually spending more time to get people to notice it. And so, yeah, there was nothing to be afraid of. I think it was just the fear of the unknown.
And did you get any resistance again internally to this?
Yeah, definitely from my team early on. So
Okay.
here's the timeline. Is 2022. I hear about the tweet. 6 months later, we start talking about it, and then probably 2 months later at a team meeting, I bring up the idea. So I'm not forcing anything. I'm just saying, hey, I'm considering making. I'm so proud of you guys. I love our metrics. I'm considering making them public. And it was just like gasp. Like, are you crazy? Like, why are you doing this to us? Do you hate us? And I was, no. I'm doing this because I'm really proud of you. And I think, people have to kind of let that sit for a while. So I didn't bring it up again for another couple of weeks. And then again, I kept mentioning it. So very early and often, even 3 months before we actually went live with it, I was making sure the team was on board to the point where if one person would have told me they weren't comfortable, I wouldn't have done it. So it was really just making sure the team understood this is going to create a ton of value for you. You should be really proud of the work that you do. This is going to be a way that will be a daily reminder, not only to you, but to everybody. And for customers, it's going to build a lot of trust because
Right.
there's maybe 5 to 10 companies worldwide that do this, in our space. And so it's a very radical punk thing to do, but also there's a lot of benefits of doing it.
And how has that worked out sort of externally? Or well, I guess there's two levels to this. I mean, like, by publishing your metrics and making them public, have you seen any impacts kind of on them? And also, what's been the impacts from customers in sharing that sort of too?
Yeah, I think the biggest impact, which I didn't expect actually, was the lead generation. So we've got you've got the page there and it's part of our website, but you can actually track, I didn't work enough with marketing before this time. And now I understand, like, oh, wow, you can actually track and follow someone who went to the metrics and then they went to look at this, or maybe they reached out for a demo. It's also now a part of every salesperson's, demo call, and it's a part of our board deck. So it's just integrated into the entire company now. And I think that's the thing that is my favorite part, is it's an automatic way to get your whole company involved and behind your support team without them even knowing it. They're proud of the metrics. They're talking about it. We're sharing it. So that's the biggest thing, is if you can tie it back to how you're actually creating more value for the company, that's a huge win. Yeah.
I think what it does do also, it speaks to the idea that's not often acknowledged within the sort of the whole lead gen process, whether it's marketing or sales, that people don't just buy on features and benefits. They buy on also what happens when something goes wrong and we have a question, and because they don't want to feel so stranded. And that's a big part of that whole, the buyer's kind of journey. Well, people we know we do it ourselves, right? You learn more when you find something and you think, oh, I need to check that out. And you see all these 5-star reviews. And then you go, let me check out what the 1-star reviews are like, because how they respond to that, or what they say about that, or what people talk about that, gives me an idea of what happens what could go wrong. And then I can gauge kind of how companies respond. And I think it's a really important sort of dynamic in there. So, as you say, is like, you've got people that are coming onto the site that are browsing your support metrics, and then you can track them and they go, click on demo, or give me a call about this, or kind of like reach out about that. And it speaks to buyer behavior and what's in buyers' minds. It's like they've done the due diligence about what they're looking for in the platform, or whether you can fit. And then almost the second order sort of thing is like, okay, let's look into what happens when I have a question and I don't want to be left hanging. And that's the kind of the double side of things. So I think it's what you're doing is, and what you've done, I think is brilliant. I love to see more people doing it.
Yeah, me too. I do wish more people would get on board. I see so many benefits, but I understand why. There's the friction of it's very scary and
Yeah.
you feel very vulnerable, your metrics are public. But again, if you can tie it to value and why it's a good experience for customers, because I'm a customer, we're all consumers.
Mm,
And I agree with you. I think the behavior is changing where I'm trying to buy something for my niece and I'm reading every review on Amazon,
right.
where it should just be a really easy decision. And for companies that truly say that customer experience is a differentiator, that's why you should pick us over them.
Mhm.
You should make your metrics public. Like put your
Right.
money where your mouth is. If your experience is so good, if your support is so good, why not boast about it? Why not show the world and take the curtain like Oz, right? Like
Yeah.
let's see what's behind the curtain, and you can see ours, like good or bad. You might even be having a bad day today if you're listening to this and you want to go check out a report. But that's it. You have to live with the results, and I'm fine with that.
Nice. And so tell me, these are all, if you like, what's the word? Sort of almost organic developments, organizational developments within what you're trying to do. Are you helping your customers kind of follow in your stead, as it were, by building these kind of features and these options into your kind of product? And you're like, we've done this, we've road tested it, we've tested, we know this works. You can do it too.
Yes, because the biggest friction I had was, okay, this is a great idea. Let's do it. Let's make our metrics public. How do we actually do that? And
Mhm.
so those 3 months, between me talking to the team was actually working with the engineering team, working with the product team, figuring out how do I actually do this? How do I live stream our metrics to a public website? And so the cool thing that happened was we created a feature where any front customer can publish their metrics in 3 clicks. And so 3 months of work that I had to do can now be done in 30 seconds. So it's just removing that barrier. So if you
Mhm.
really want to make your metrics public, you can. If you use Front, you can just hit the publish button. It's boom, it's there. Choose what you want to show. But I think for other folks, yeah, it's harder. You have to figure out how you're going to host it, what data platform,
Yeah.
and those kind of things. So yeah, that is one thing that did come out of it.
And have you seen, what sort of uptake have you seen around your kind of customers? Have you seen kind of a lot of people going, "Oh, I've seen this, but I'm not so sure. I want to know a bit more about it before I hit publish."
We had actually really good adoption from the launch, like from the announcement. We had people go lives the same day in some cases. So
Wow,
yeah,
cool.
we're keeping an eye on it. So for me, it's cool because it helps, to validate my crazy idea of I do think this is something hopefully in the next few years it becomes a common thing that all support teams do because it does give power to the customers on transparency of, hey, I'm going to buy this thing. I want to know what I'm getting into. I really care about support. It's like insurance, especially when in the worst of times. I want to know
Mhm.
who's going to help me and how. And this is one way you can do it. And it's a really easy way. Like the hard part is set up. Once it's there, it's there. It's just a constant evergreen resource.
There is, just to kind of reinforce the point and potentially the power of being able to do this and why this can be it can be important. There was a piece of research that I found, and this is about 12 years ago, and it was by a company called ClickFox. They're no longer around. They got acquired, I think, by Salesforce. Actually, can't remember exactly who, but they did a piece of research around customer loyalty, and they found that 90% of all loyalty is generated by 2 points on a customer's journey. And about just over 50% of that 90% is generated by what happens around the buying experience, the whole research, navigate, engagement, onboarding, all that sort of type of things. But the remaining 40% thereabouts was generated, the 40% of the loyalty was generated by what happens when something goes wrong. And I think if you think about those sort of things, there's that's statistic. But if you think about it, if you zoom out a little bit and think about it from a human psychological perspective, it makes complete sense. Because the first 50%, as it were, is that we want to make smart decisions, right? We want to feel good about kind of us kind of choosing to buy something because we want to feel that it's the right decision. We want to feel confident about it. We want to feel good about it. That makes sense. So making that easy, simple, friction-free, easy to understand, all that type of stuff is great. But the other sort of 40% relates to our sort of like survival instinct. That sort of thing is we don't like risk, uncertainty, disappointment, failure, struggle, all these different sort of things. And when we find somebody that helps us avoid those things, we think they're heroes. Right? When something goes wrong, we were like, oh, come and save me. And so what we don't do is we don't acknowledge how important service and support is in driving loyalty. And it's a significant part of it. And that's why I would say to people is like, look, consider some of these things about getting people involved in support because it builds those connections, but also kind of like pushing your support to the front, making your metrics kind of public, getting people to talk about why it's important, particularly your salespeople, because you're talking about the performance of the support team, because this matters in the minds of your buyers. This completely makes a difference. And to ignore that, you're ignoring a big lever in the minds of your customers. But anyway, that's my point. I just said to drive home the kind of the point that you're doing, because that's some of the cool stuff. But I also wanted to kind of say, well, bring this fronts approach and the collaboration sort of approach to life. I wanted to ask you to bring it to life, but through maybe a couple of examples of brands that you're working with and how they've used Front, about what they're doing and how they're benefiting and the outcomes they're driving, just to kind of bring the whole approach to life rather than, to bring it back down to earth rather than just all these radical kind of new ideas.
Yeah, one company that stands out is US Mobile. So they're one of our largest customers, and they're one of the heaviest users of our chatbot. So while email for us is kind of the bread and butter for a lot of support teams, they rely on chat. So their use case is great because also the same collaboration you do in email, they're able to do in chat. So they have an insanely fast response time, which they should publicize their metrics if you're listening, because they're amazing. I literally think it's seconds. Like, I can't remember the exact amount of seconds, but it could be under 10 seconds. But their response time is like absolutely amazing. And you could see, because I actually got a chance to talk to their CEO a while back, and you could see how much he cares about support. Right. So he has that same mindset, and it kind of trickles down. So the fact that he cares about it so much, you can see he really invests. And that's typically what we see. If you're choosing Front and you really care about support, those companies have a lot more success because we are the collaboration tool for support. So if you can leverage that in your favor, you're going to have a good outcome.
And I think that it's also the collaboration point, I think, is well made, because if we think about the evolution of some of these digital technological kind of tools, that they're going to mature, they're going to get better, and many customers will be able to self-serve, increasingly going forward. And therefore, the type of requests coming into service and support are probably going to get more complicated. And those will increasingly require collaboration in order to solve them, because most of that expertise or knowledge or access to systems doesn't sit on the front line, and it sits in the middle office or the back office or wherever some other part of an organization. And so that collaboration, your ability to collaborate and access that knowledge and expertise quickly is going to be a defining factor in terms of what your support performance kind of going forward.
Yeah, I also think collaborating with AI is really important. So you collaborate with your teammates and humans, but it's just as important to have a seamless experience. So that's something I've found. Like, I like the way that we use AI on our team, because it's very much a partnership, and we're more thinking about how can we work with this technology to make it a good experience and not just use it as a defense wall. So that's something I'm looking forward to seeing, is how that's going to evolve over time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And so you mentioned AI, and that's all the kind of the big talk kind of now. And I just wanted to maybe kind of like zoom out a little bit and say, you're a technology company. You're kind of building these AI-enabled sort of the tools more and more as part of the platform, but also thinking about other things that can help. I mean, but I wanted to ask you, given that you're sort of in the inverted commas, the thick of it, what are some of the big trends and technologies that you are noticing that you think are going to drive and shape the future of experience and support, and what should we be doing to harness the potential of them and prepare for them?
Yeah, I think I'm seeing a lot more voice of the customer insights technology. So even in the next few years, I think that's where we're going to see the most growth. So we've basically figured out how much a chatbot can do, how much they can handle. Maybe that's going to get better. That'll get better over time. But I think the untapped, like, more interesting part is, how can folks like me and you, like support leaders, use AI to talk to the data, like tell me the trends that you're seeing and, catch things proactively. And I think that's where we're going to see more take off. And that's where I'm kind of putting my chips on is how can I create this, ecosystem where everything's connected. And so I have all the customer data, all the personalization. And for me, I just have to ask, hey, what's going on here? Like what's on this report? So that I think that's what's coming up.
Excellent. No, that's a really good point. And I'm seeing similar sort of things. A lot of people kind of are doing a lot of very cool things in that analytics sort of like space about pulling all these disparate sort of forms of data in kind of real time together and allowing people to access it and identify patterns and, make suggestions about what potential kind of like solves kind of might be. And so, yeah, no, it's very much a fast moving sort of space. So and I think one that it's not seen necessarily as much attention as other spaces, within this.
Yeah.
So Kenji, anything else that you want to highlight that we've missed out before I ask you some quick fire questions?
Yeah, no, I feel like we've covered it. I'm always looking for the next hot take and support. So maybe I'll have another one next time we talk.
Excellent. Well, I look forward to that, I'll tell you. But before we wrap up, a couple of quick fire questions. And then the first one I've been asking is about, people around people's best advice if they want to improve their customer employee experience. But the way I do that, I've been asking them to complete this sentence. And the sentence is, if you want to improve your customer or employee experience, Kenji says, do this. Over to you.
Be transparent.
Boom. Full stop.
Full stop. To your employees, to your customers, transparency is the way.
Fantastic. I love that. Okay. Next. So for it, and it would be remiss of me not to add a punk related question, given this is the Punk CX podcast. And so I wanted to ask you, what company or brands do you think takes a punk approach to CX or is like an experienced leader? Like they've got it all knitted together. And so who comes to mind and why?
Yeah. So Scott Tran of Support Driven comes to mind for me.
Okay.
He, to me, is the definition of punk and support, because if you've been to his Support Driven events, they're very bootstrapped. He's traveling all over the country and the world. He's his own roadie. But he finds a way to, just to put on these events and create these gatherings. And I respect all the work that he's doing. But I think that he's a great example. And if you're not a part of that community, I highly recommend that. And there's a lot of other great CX communities as well. But Scott Tran, Support Driven, is punk to me.
Awesome. A big shout out to Scott. I know that Support Driven kind of crew. So I will make sure I give him a shout out when the podcast goes live. And the final question before we wrap up is related to a good news story, because I don't know about you, but for me, the world feels a bit weird and there's a lot of doom scrolling going on right now. And so I've been asking people to help me end these podcasts on a good news story. So Kenji, tell me a good news story. Tell me what's the most interesting, exciting, or the thing that's made you feel warm and fuzzy that you've kind of seen or experienced in the last kind of like week.
Yeah, nothing in the news. I don't read a lot of news, but I'll share something that gave me the warm and fuzzies, which is we did something a little cheesy, a little fun. My support team created an anthem for support teams. So it's called We Are the Voice, kind of like a la We Are the World. It's highly produced. So check it out on SoundCloud. It's called We Are the Voice by Front the Jewels. But it's just a fun thing, like Thanksgiving, Christmas, all these holidays that support teams have to work. I wanted to give them a song that they could just listen to. It's a feel-good song. So that's my good news. Hopefully you check it out.
Awesome. Well, we'll make sure we'll find that. I'll go digging that out and make sure I get all that linked up. I will promise not to sing that on the next. No, please. I will kind of save the world from my singing voice.
You do the punk version.
Oh, well, they could do that, but then I would probably need to save people from that as well. But Kenji, just wanted to say, I salute you for the work that you're doing in terms of getting everybody involved in support, for carrying the flag in that and building on it and get it and telling the story and talking to people about it. But also the idea about making your metrics public. I mean, those are two super punk things. And just want to say, I tip my hat to you for those, but I also just want to say thank you for sharing your time and your expertise and your insight today. That's been super cool.
Thank you so much. That means so much to me. Thank you.
Wow, what a great interview. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I did. Find out more about me and the work that I do at adrianswinscoe.com. Do leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. And if you have any comments, feedback, or questions about the podcast, then feel free to send me a message to podcast@adrianswinscoe.com. And do tune in again. Thanks very much.